I was at PubKey on Thursday, and I talked to multiple of these firms' wholesalers.
Today we listen in on the ETF expert at Bloomberg Intelligence, James Seyffert.
So I talked to wholesalers from 21 Shares, I talked to people from Hashdex, I talked to people from Bitwise and VànEck, and probably others.
Who gives us an exclusive update on these 11 massive companies who just launched spot Bitcoin ETFs.
These guys, their work starts next week. Right? They have meetings lined up out the wazoo all next week to go do what David was just talking about, and going to talk to these advisors and clients about these products.
As James shares what's next for Bitcoin.
Right. So all of these issuers are going to have people starting next week going to talk to people about these. And to his point even further, they're still not going to buy next week.
Make sure you watch the whole video if you own crypto.
The conversation's going to happen. They're going to get more interest. They're going to pay attention. They're going to do their due diligence. Maybe some of them will be interested in it, but it's the conversation that's going to be happening. And that's how these people are getting in the doors at a lot of these advisors.
And even though price is dipping today, what comes next for Bitcoin in these coming weeks will shock you.
James, Hunter Horsley on the day of the launch told us that they had already had meetings. They had 20, he counted them, that they had 20,000 meetings. Bitwise alone had 20,000 effectively pitch meetings, and that was in advance of all of this. And you have to remember that them, VANEck, Valkyrie, these are the most Bitcoin native, right, who get it. I think that the bulk of these haven't even gone on that roadshow yet. And then, as you said, first they got to convince the RIAs and the institutions, and then they have to go convince their clients. So it's probably a 6-month trickle just to even get the ball rolling.
Now, this exclusive audio comes from Crypto Town Hall streaming live on X Spaces, and the sheer amount of volume we've seen in the first few days is nothing compared to what's about to happen. Let's listen in.
And you also got to realize, even based on that same firm, Bitwise's survey, most advisors weren't expecting this. So the advisors that Hunter was talking about from Bitwise were the people that had an interest in this.
The 30%, the 30% who literally thought this would even happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a whole other level of people that are now going to be like, okay, now these exist. I'll take a meeting and maybe just learn a little bit about this asset class. That's where we're at with a lot of these people. So it's going to take time.
And while inflows crushed outflows, there are still some wonky things like settlement delays that you need to be aware of. Click the like button if you appreciate me keeping you up to date on this alpha.
But it seems like since then, very clearly, inflows crushed outflows. I mean, James, is that correct? That's my impression.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of wonky things going on here. I'll just walk through them a little bit. These are things I plan to write about this week. But essentially, there's two fundamental things that are causing lags in exactly what's going on in the market. The first is settlement, which everyone is talking about. There's T+2 settlement in many of these cases. So people might be selling GBTC. And even if they do plan to buy another Bitcoin ETF or Bitcoin itself, in many cases, they just don't have the money. They don't have the money yet. It's settling, so they can't rebuy, whether it's in the same brokerage or if they're actually planning to buy spot. They need to wait till it settles in the brokerage, and then they can wire it somewhere where they can buy it, right? So that's the first thing. So I think that there's probably some money that's come out of GBTC that will come back in. The other problem is the way that mutual fund accounting works, which depends how in the weeds you want to get here. But because a lot of these firms that do the accounting for these ETFs, they primarily did this with mutual funds, which had a different process than ETFs for creating shares, as we've discussed many times. But in many cases, that means there's a T+1 situation where you don't really know exactly what happened to flows until the day after, which, believe me, I know to anyone in crypto seems like absolutely insane to even be talking about. So we definitely have an idea of what happened through Thursday and even through Friday for the vast majority, but there's still some wonky things going on trying to figure out. That said, I'm with you. The volume numbers were pretty much unheard of for the most part for multiple ETFs launching at the same time, doing the same thing. I can't really say it's a record because it was multiple ETFs, but iShares alone came close to a record. GBTC, which is cheating, broke the record for first day of trading. But if you include all of them and even exclude GBTC, I mean, this blew any ETF record out the door in the US as far as we're concerned.
So investors are buying in to these ETFs. We have the exact numbers.
We do know the numbers a little bit. So we've already seen at least 1.4 billion flow into all the new ETFs. At least 1.4. They could be also suffering from some of the same settlement and T+1 mutual fund accounting issues that GBTC is. So I've been saying, I mean, every time I was on here, I was like, guys, don't worry too much about the first few days. There's going to be a bunch of money that comes in, but a lot of it is going to be recycled. And I was trying to say, it's going to be about figuring out how much of this is recycled. We're probably going to see money. We're already seeing it. We're probably going to see money flow from other ETFs around the world, primarily Canada. We're going to see it from futures products. Futures themselves had a huge unwind during this whole thing. And also Bitcoin itself was, by any technical metric and even structural network based on the futures market, was overbought. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. That said, just give it time, give it time before these things are operating. These guys are not going to buy. It's going to be even longer than what you were talking about. Some people might be waiting for what you're talking about, a little bit for the dust to settle, because GBTC is still trading a little bit of a discount, large for multiple reasons, which we can get into, but it's going to happen over the coming weeks and months. So the first week will be when I think I'm planning to check back and be like, how did this actually go? So we'll know at the end of this week.
So the bottom line is, we always expected a bit of buy the rumor, sell the news. A 15% dip in bull markets is very normal. And even taking a look at the infamous rainbow chart for Bitcoin, we're in the darker green band currently, which is the time to accumulate. Any other time in Bitcoin's history, if you would have bought in that dark green band, hey, it might have dipped. It may have gone lower, but over time, if you were willing to hodl past the yellow, past the orange, the upper bands are when you sell, the lower bands are where you buy. And if we take a look at where this chart says that we should be by this year's halving, and again, does not mean this has to happen. This says keep accumulating at any amount under 51,000, hold in the 67 to 89,000 range, and anything above 90,000, that's the time to take profits. In a few weeks, let's check back into this, see where we are. Breaking news for altcoins, Google Cloud joins Flare Network as a validator. FLR jumps 5%. So really, Google Cloud is partnered with a handful of cryptocurrencies. It is big news that Flare got the nod as well. And Flare, which calls itself the blockchain for data, gives developers access to decentralized data via its Oracle system. So think of this like a Chainlink competitor. And Google Cloud is actually one of 100 organizations adopting this combined role, I guess validating for the Flare blockchain, both securing the network as a validator and contributing to the Flare time series Oracle. This is going to be a major next few weeks for crypto. Make sure you click subscribe. We literally drop just one video per day, keeping you informed on this industry. Can you afford not to subscribe? Seriously. See you tomorrow.